Alright guys, time to come up here back again today. Hope you enjoyed your day so far, and today we're going to discuss Dylan, Envoy, Hannon. Yesterday there was a very interesting episode of the NRG Duo podcast which came up with Envoy and Andy Miller. I think Hex was away playing golf or something like that. But a really interesting early discussion in the video about how back in the day he was a very toxic asset to his team. His attitude certainly held him back, and he also talks about work ethic, right? And now a number of the players in the pro scene right now are being cycled out for players that are younger, up and coming, and actually do have the work ethic to succeed at the highest level. I wanted to talk a little bit about this as to, well, the type of players that Envoy might be discussing here, and how we've seen this impact the scene over the last couple of seasons, especially now going to a 4 versus 4 12 team environment where a lot of players are finding themselves on the sidelines. And Envoy, of course, isn't one of them, but he's changed significantly from what he used to be a few years ago from his perspective. Intrigued to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. Like if you guys enjoyed the video, subscribe if you are new as always. I'd greatly appreciate it. Really helps out the channel. Thank you for doing that. First of all then, this is a clip from the Atlanta FaZe tournament that's going on right now. I'll probably put this on the big screen at the end of the video. Pretty cool clip of Envoy absolutely smoking everyone like he used to do back in the Black Ops 4 days. These then are his placements over his career. So as you can see, Advanced Warfare, he actually did play a couple of events way back in the day. He mentioned these in the video as well, like the Just Us team that he was on actually with Kenny alongside him, Assault and Spacely. Then the age restriction comes into effect. He basically keyboards for a couple of years, as he mentions in this episode. I'll leave a link down below if you guys want to watch the whole thing, but I thought I'd pick out a couple of interesting things to touch on today. Then World War II didn't exactly have the greatest year on Team War at a time. Then Black Ops 4 really kicked off from the Midnight Gaming team that qualified for the Pro League. Was so good at the start. It was like 6-1 at the start of the Pro League or something like that. Eventually picked up onto Gen G. Didn't win an event though that season, but they came very close down a high man in the playoffs. And they were the best team not to win an event that season for sure. Just couldn't quite get over the line, and Envoy was a fantastic talent in that SMG role. So good indeed that he reached out to us at team. He was like, yeah, we can be a duo going into next season. The rumor was that they were going to Seattle, right? That there was a Seattle team almost lined up and in the works. That fell through though when Scump and Formal and Hector Rodriguez and the other Chicago Huntsmen guys that finally got everything together decided to go and pick them up, and they came onto that team, won at the London event and won the Seattle home series as well, I believe, a few months later. So that's a quick overview of his career trajectory, but he has some very interesting things to say on what he used to be like as a player and what some of the other players have done that have held them back.
There could be a superstar you pick up and he could have the worst attitude in the world, and like that, I like to think that was almost me. Like back in the day, I had the worst attitude. I thought I was pretty gross at the game, but the attitude held me back, and ultimately I paid the price for it, and my reputation went down and all that. So I think if there was a lot more, if people looked at esports with more of like a sports background, I think they'd help themselves a lot in mentality wise.
Who have you seen over the years, who was just filthy, nasty, skill-based, but never kind of made it as a player on a team?
I think that's a tough one, honestly. I don't want to point anyone out either.
Well, it's not necessarily a negative. I mean, it's just a reality, right?
I mean, I think in general, I think you're seeing more, or at least in our scene, the Call of Duty scene nowadays, is that players with bad work ethics and bad attitudes are getting cycled out for new upcoming players just because of that potential. I even talked to a bunch of the coaches in the league, and they talk about their players, their work ethics and stuff, and it's well, he's disgusting, but if he doesn't want to try in scrims, or he's bringing the team's vibes down, or bringing another player down on the team, then it's almost not worth it to keep him, because the chemistry of the team ultimately is what matters more.
So there's really two parts to this that I find interesting. One part is, of course, players that are, toxic assets to a team in terms of their attitude, and they're not willing to put in the practice and not willing to put in the hard graft. And we've seen a number of discussions really about that this season, especially with the pandemic going on. Everyone's not necessarily in the best mood, and those kind of toxic attributes to a teammate can maybe certainly come out this season more than they have in the past. So there's part of that as well, like the amateur players, right, for example, that are really, really talented, but can they get over the line in terms of actually being a good teammate? That is a big question. The other side of it is the work ethic, right? And players that are more willing, like the guys like Awakening, for example, and Mac, that have come out this season and have, put in the time and really grinded the game day in, day out, whether they actually enjoy the game or not. Whereas some of the OG pro players, for example, that have been around a number of years, if they don't particularly enjoy the game, they might not necessarily be playing it. And I think Kenny was saying on the Bricecast quite interestingly how back in World War II there, that Team Caliber squad, Theory was on the team, and after they had a bit of a poor result that you guys might remember, they won Dallas, they won NOLA right at the start of the year, and then after that, they fell off quite significantly. Theory wasn't performing, and Theory said to the rest of the guys, like, okay, yeah, look, I wasn't grinding the game, like, I need to focus up, I need to grind more and practice harder. And, you know, then, well, Kenny would go into his room and something, he'd just be playing zombies. So it wasn't actually, like, putting in the graft that he said he was going to, and as a result, he got kicked out of the team, and, well, Ferro eventually came into the squad, and Enable later on, and they won the Stage 2 playoffs. So quite interesting to see how that can happen, especially maybe for players that have won events in the past, and, yeah, therefore, that kind of motivation maybe drops off a little bit. And I think we see it, well, especially throughout the Pro League, if you look at some of these players that aren't making it in next season, I mean, some of the Los Angeles Guerrillas guys, it's not necessarily they don't pick in the work ethic, there's of course the other angle of, you know, are they actually as good as they used to be, but probably those two sides of the coin go together somewhat. People have definitely talked about Saints over the last few years, about how maybe he doesn't grind the game like he used to, and, yeah, he used to be one of the best players, probably, I would say, to have never won the World Championship. Nowadays, people don't really talk about him so much. I'm sure there's other players as well that you feel fit into this category. A lot of the discussion this season was around Seattle Surge, right? Now, Enable said that early on, like, he wasn't grinding the game like he should have done. You can definitely say the same for the rest of the team. I mean, you know, also Optic Gaming Los Angeles, Kenny was basically saying that this early team, just like they would chalk scrims like 3 days in a row because it was so frustrating. Dashy wasn't willing to, you know, put in the effort, and we gave him the free reign and the opportunity to use the guns he wanted to use. Slasher would even use like an SMG, and he still didn't really take advantage of it in that sense. So work ethic is a big thing, but also attitude problems, right? And we've seen this happen a number of years. Toxic players on a team or whatever, that people don't really want to play with them. And it comes up a lot nowadays in the amateur scene. So example like Sibilance, people talk about this guy quite a lot because obviously he is an incredibly talented player. As you can see, this like Ilcabs episode he put up not too long ago. But there was kind of the drama what happened this season when he got kicked from the FaZe clan team for the slow or whatever, and then he was able to come back. But it's not just that, right? I think a lot of people look at Sibilance and think like, look, he needs to mature up somewhat. Like, he's obviously a very talented player, but at the same time, does he have the level of maturity? Like, does he think he's better than all the teammates he plays with? And, you know, I believe he may have actually been in some discussions to try and get on some of the pro teams this season, but, you know, for the Black Ops Cold War season, but no one was really willing to give him a shot yet, and that's not because he isn't talented enough, that's just because he hasn't proven he can necessarily be a good teammate. And especially in the 4 versus 4 environment, that's something which is very key. And Envoy was talking about how in the early times of the Black Ops 4 season, he was teaming with Ricky Achura on like just the online scene, and they actually decided to kick him from the team because he just wasn't working for team chemistry, and he really had to buck his ideas up, I suppose, and come into that midnight lineup and got much better. But it kind of takes a difficult experience like that maybe to kind of teach yourself that, okay, well, I really need to focus up to actually be the best teammate I can possibly be. So Sibilance is a guy, especially in the amateur scene, a lot of people have talked about this kind of topic in discussion with, but also you've got other players as well, like Envoy back in 2018 here, just a funny tweet talking about RCTs, like about boarding or whatever, 11th month sober from boarding, which is kind of entertaining. But also you've got guys like Crimsix, right, how you know, COD's Toxic God and his Search for Redemption, I believe this was a Score Esports piece or something like that, and these guys are in the replies like Looney, Crim is too soft to be a Toxic God, and Looney is certainly someone that people have talked about as well, known as like Dagger Dan, because he would kind of well, you know, mess up his early teams, I suppose. And I think this is a tweet as well, still chilling in 2016, I'm leaving Dagger Dan behind. That's a strong start for well 2017 for example. And well, still certainly a lot of people would say that on Looney's teams he's been a very frustrating member to team with at times, and I think even on the Toronto Ultra this season they were playing in like their home facility, and Looney had like a bit of an outburst to some of his teammates saying like how, you know, they made the wrong play or whatever, and the management saw that, and they basically just dropped him off the team then and there because they didn't think that was a good like attribute to have to a team. And you know, if Looney gets along with the rest of his team and they understand that that's kind of the, you know, the ecosystem that they have, and Looney's gonna call you out if you made a wrong play, and he's quite happy to be called out if he makes a wrong play. That's kind of the relationship that Looney and Gunless have had. You can actually see him in their AVI right here from when they were winning everything on Rise Nation back in World War II. But from a lot of players' perspectives and maybe from a management perspective, that doesn't exactly look like you're being a good teammate, right? And it's been a discussion for a number of seasons. Of course, the most famous example of this might be Parasite, right? Winning the World Championship back in 2013, but over the next couple of years, he didn't necessarily treat his teammates the best that he possibly could have done. And even very recently, we're seeing tweets still come out, well, to this effect, right? On 20th of August, Parasite says, "This is the stigma I deal with when I just build everyone up and go above and beyond for my teammates to ensure as much success as possible. Yet people want to call me out for stuff I did years ago and some isolated incident. I make everyone I play with better." And this may well be the truth nowadays. Like we've seen the last few seasons, Parasite has brought up a number of up-and-comers that have gone on to bigger and better things, I suppose, and well, brought up many players in the amateur community, and seems to have improved quite significantly as a teammate over the years. But the problem is that, well, you know, what we think about in terms of Parasite and his actual gamer tag probably doesn't help, means that a lot of people go in with the preconception that Parasite is not going to be a good teammate teammate for XYZ reason, and that's really cost his career over the last few seasons when, you know, he still was a fantastic player in Advanced Warfare, for example, and coming third at the World Championships on FaZe Red, but not too long after that, things fell off quite significantly for him. And it's definitely a career trajectory that people try and have to avoid, and well, certainly some of these players that we're going to see on this, well, the league scoreboard, I suppose, in a second, or at least the players that are rumoured or have been confirmed so far this season, a number of them have been considered like the new Parasite to some degree. People talk about Temp, like, is he the best teammate to play with in certain situations? What about Gunless, right? Like, every single team he seems to be on, like, falls apart in the middle of the year, unless it's winning, like, well, when he was teaming with Looney back in the World War II days. So very interesting discussion. Intrigued to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. Which players do you think their work ethics have fallen off quite significantly over the last few years, and as a result of that, they're no longer in the Pro League, or certainly on the fringes? And on the flip side, which players do you think their toxic attitudes, as Envoy's was back in the day, have been costing them in the last couple of seasons? Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did enjoy it, I'd greatly appreciate a like on the video. It really helps out the YouTube algorithm know you enjoyed this content. Other people like you may enjoy this content as well. Thank you for watching as always. Take care, and I will see you next time.
I think there's another one close.
Nice, close.
Three dead.
I'm watching vent weak. He's their side vent.
Can you keep watching that, Matt? Keep watching that, Matt?
I'll try to get vent. Yo, vent dead. I have window.
Vent, nice. Nice, I'm going. Go B. Nothing on B yet.
He's on pinch. Yo, he's fucking B. He's fucking B, Seth. 100%.
Nothing lobby. He's gonna be stairs for sure.
Lobby. House trophy. He's out of block.
Nice, good win, dude.
Yeah, there's.
Let's double team this guy, Seth, right here.
Stairs done.
Yeah, there's still. Yeah, let's double team this guy.
Dude, they cannot fuck with me, dude.